So this video has taken a lot longer than I thought it would because I've been agonizing over it. However, this is essentially its final form no matter what it takes, so here it goes. Recently, Helldivers 2 got some balancing updates, and after playing them for a decent amount of time, here's my thoughts on everything. Also, I'm talking about the 1.000.1 changes. However, the day I'm writing this, they released the 1.000.102 update, which has made the recoilless rifle and the disposable AT better against charges. However, I'm not changing what I've already typed, so here we go again, I guess. The changes were supposed to mix up the meta. Unfortunately, it feels like all it did was take the meta and make it slightly worse. I initially really liked the changes because they weren't too crazy and made people look at all the other options available to them, but after some time playing, I hit the conclusion that the railgun and shield generator are still basically the meta for the simple reason it is the most versatile setup that currently is, so what actually currently is the meta? With people only really looking at the bugs or terminids, the meta is, well, swarm control. Swarm control consists of two main factors: rate of fire, damage output. Rate of fire takes into account how fast a weapon fires, its capacity and reload speed, both before and after empty. Damage output is simply the amount of damage a weapon can output in a given time frame. The railgun can fire a good charge shot to deal with armored targets more efficiently than any other weapon in the game, as any weapon that can do the same thing has a fairly long reload and forces the user to be stationary. That is, unless it's crew loaded. More on that later though. The other meta equipment is currently the shield generator pack. It simply increases survivability by preventing aim punch and giving you an extra health bar. The breaker shotgun is still the top of the chain, even though its capacity was reduced and the recoil increased. It still does the highest damage in the shortest amount of time, allowing for quick crowd control on the priority targets. Stratagems are personal taste and take into account the amount of time it takes to come in, as well as any planet modifiers, but I'm not going to spend too much time on them simply because with the sheer amount of enemies you need to deal with, you'll be relying more on your equipment than the stratagems to deal with the most common types of engagements. Now with the balancing patch, they increased the damage of the other shotgun in the game, the Punisher and the Slugger, and increase their abilities to stagger targets, which has its own benefits. But in the ability to actually win fights and deal with the bugs, they fall horrifically short of the breaker due to them being pump action. However, as they reload rounds rather than full magazines, their damage output is comparable and their rate of fire is drastically different. But the Slugger and Punisher both losing out just slightly to the breaker, but enough to really feel the difference. Now, I don't begrudge the shotguns being the most effective against a melee-focused enemy. That's just basic logic. Who thought that a weapon designed to be used in the face of the enemy would be effective against an enemy that likes to get in your face? It's mind-blowing stuff, honestly. So throwing the breaker shotgun, a fast-firing, medium-capacity damage powerhouse with a weapon that can strip the armor off of armored targets really is a no-brainer, even if now it's just that little bit harder to do. But all of this information now begs the question, how do we mix up the meta? And the answer, although complex, is pretty simple. We need more tools that meet the ability to deal with swarms and fast-closing enemies. Simple in concept, but far more difficult in practice. But I think Helldivers 2 is a uniquely qualified game to play around with all of this. Why? Because of the different factions in the game, and this is where I talk about the automatons. You'll be surprised that although the breaker shotgun is pretty effective, it's not the meta for fighting automatons. And actually, it's only really effective in the niche cases where the enemy is charging straight at you. Given that is a good portion of the time. However, this isn't all the time, and especially on higher difficulties, they tend to keep at a decent distance and slowly close in on you. And with them being so tough and armored, the breaker, again although effective, is not the most effective. Funny enough, in my testing, you want to know what the truly most effective weapon against the automatons is? The last 5 scythe. The scythe is an energy-based weapon that fires in a continuous beam, and if I read the stat block right, can fire for 8 continuous seconds without modifiers, doing 300 damage per second with minimal recoil and carrying 6 spare heat sinks. It can fire almost continuous for over a minute with a short delay between heat swapping if fired to overheating. So why isn't this good for the bugs? It is decently effective against them, and you can see that with the Guard Dark Rover. However, because it takes seconds to deal its full damage, those seconds are so precious with the bugs because you're a few milliseconds from being swarmed and overwhelmed. And you can see that if you don't target priority targets like the Hunter and you're using the Scythe, even when they get close you can't deal its damage fast enough to prevent a death. So what's the point I'm trying to make here? The two factions currently in the game take very different playstyles and equipment to deal with. Before the patch, the Railgun, Shield Pack and Breaker were the only ones people unanimously agreed were the only good things to use, and I had to agree. Although I did try to use other things, and with my group of friends found some more effective and viable strategies, they all hinged on one thing in particular: teamwork and coordination. And here's where I talk about the crew weapons and their problems. So let's start with my favorite, the recoilless rifle. Continuing to concentrate on the bugs here, because that's what most people do, the recoilless rifle is by nature an anti-tank weapon. With 6 rounds, 1 in the weapon, 5 in the backpack, that can easily strip the armor off a charger and blow the head off of a Bile Titan, provided you hit the damn thing. Its big and glaring issue, when used solo at least, is that you need to stop and spend a fair amount of time, leaving you vulnerable to swarming so that you can get the next round ready. If you were to try and kill a charger without stripping and hitting it with your primary weapon, it would take 3 to 4 rounds of the 6 you have, at least in my testing. Again, I know with the most recent patch that they did, it's now 1 shot to the head, so it's pretty quick now, but point still stands. If you hit it in the body and you can't get that headshot, it's 3 to 4 of the rounds of the 6 you have. For a Bile Titan, it's 2 to 3 headshots and about half your allotted ammo. Bear in mind the resupply gives you 2 rounds per resupply for the recoilless backpack, so solo it's good for dealing with 1 charger in a small swarm, or a Bile Titan that you've already hit with multiple stratagems and just need that 1 hit to finish off. However, even with a high rate of ammo consumption, if you want to use it like a club and not a precision tool, its rate of fire becomes insane when crew loaded, allowing you to burn through all 6 rounds in literal seconds. The tool's effectiveness skyrockets when it's assisted loaded, but it does come at a cost of some things. You're now using 2 bodies instead of 1, you're still sacrificing maneuverability which leaves you open to swarming, and it's only really good this way to deal with 2, maybe 3 heavily armored units before you're just shut out of luck. Even with all 4 players working in tandem with each other and excellent cohesion, it's still better to have 4 railguns and 4 shield packs than any other combination. It's not that the railgun is overpowered, it's that the other tools we have currently just do not have the same level of efficacy. The autocannon and spear suffer from the same issues when it comes to the bugs. However, the autocannon is a bit better in that regard. It just can't deal with the bug's armor effectively and enough to overpower the railgun meta. Again, noting the changes they just made today, the recoilless rifle and heated disposable anti-tank have been increased greatly in efficacy, at least when it comes to charges and their heads. With all of that being said, I'm not one to just say, hey, here's a problem, fix it. So if anyone at Arrowhead sees this small curmudgeon YouTube video of mine, here's just a couple of suggestions to help fix the balancing issues with the bugs and break the current rail bug meta. The first suggestion I have is giving us something like the Stalwart as a primary rather than a support weapon. That would help to get people away from the Breaker simply due to its capacity. More rounds lets us deal with more small guys more quickly. Next, allowing the autocannon to, at the very least, strip the armor off of a charger's leg would help in bringing it up to the power of the railgun. Unfortunately, if they still want the railgun to be viable, it cannot receive another nerf, and thus bringing the other weapons up to the capabilities of the nerfed railgun. The autocannon doesn't need to do damage to the charger's head, it just needs to strip the armor off the legs in at least 5 shots. It is crazy stupid to have it like that, but that's how I think that we can bring the railgun up to the power, bring the autocannon up to the power of the railgun. The spear currently just doesn't function great. Simply fixing its locking and firing capabilities will help. I also think giving it a free fire mode would also help and let people try to figure out how to fire it with its arc, or even a direct lock and fire rather than a top-down attack. However, it still takes 2 shots to kill a charger, and the first will start at hemorrhaging. So the recoil is possibly upping its resupply from 2 to 3 or 4. It would give a great synergy with the supply pack, and if it's being 2-man, would really give incentive for the gunner to carry the supply pack, and the loader to carry its ammo pack. Alternatively, making it stronger as a 1-man weapon with perhaps just increased damage alone might be enough, so that if it's used as a club it would take out charges in 1 to 2 shots, even if you don't hit the head. Yeah, you can throw in a couple primary shots to the butt afterwards, but I think that would at least help. And also, yes, before I forget, the disposable anti-tank does exist, and its cooldown as a stratagem is very low. But it suffers from a different problem. It's a hybrid. Yes, you get 2 of them. Yes, it's pretty powerful for its one-shot use. However, it's a piece of equipment that I can only carry 1 of, but I get 2 of them, that I can only use once, and once I've called it in, it remains in a singular place until I can call in another one. This is just asking to be bum rushed by a charger or get swarmed by hunters, and I may talk more about how I think to balance it when I talk about the stratagems, as it's closer to them than a piece of equipment. Now we need to talk about the teamwork and cohesion with 4 players versus solo or individual play. This is a hard topic to try to cover because although the team crewed weapons do get a good amount of power, if the other 2 can't protect them or simply won't, there's no real point of having them in the first place. With that being said, that's why individual play and the current gaming culture, individual play is the only really consistent and preferred way to do it, because everyone feels like they can't rely on everyone else. It's Chad Thundercock versus the world, and people don't want to take the time to help crew weapons when they can take another tool and be as effective, or maybe slightly more or less effective, but more consistent in their performance and the jobs they can do. Basic design philosophy says that if it's versatile, it can't be powerful, and if it's powerful, it can't be versatile. So, as Arrowhead said in a Twitter statement that I can't find at the time, they're still trying to find the niches that they want everything to fill and what they want everything to do. It might be a while, but I have faith in Arrowhead and the Ministry of Truth here. In conclusion, and the TLDR version of this whole script, because of the multiple factions, the meta is going to be changed based on who you're fighting, and right now we need more tools to play with, or at least have all the tools brought up in power. Different tools do different things, and where crew weapons are concerned, they may get a massive boost in power when they're assisted, but their capacity is the lacking factor and lack of teamwork in the community as of yet. Also, the stalwart needs to become a primary weapon. The machine gun either needs a buff, or it needs the static reload removed. Solo play and playing with friends is fairly consistent and strategies worked out, but playing with a group of randoms is inconsistent and probably frustrating trying to get some cohesion. Anyway, I thank all of you for giving this video a watch. I will be covering a few different topics with Helldivers over the next few videos, and a channel update is coming fairly soon. That's if you're a regular viewer. If you're not, I do thank you for checking this one out. That's the plan at least, and I will see you all in the next one.